In this episode, we're going to show you not only how to print in multiple colors at once, but multiple materials like iron, wood, and glass. And we'll also give you our recommendations on how to choose a multi-filament printer using the Flashforge AD5X, and everything about what I liked about the printer to what I absolutely hated about it. Better stay tuned. This is your Geek Fix. Hi, I'm Jeremy. This is your Geek Fix, and 7 years ago, I started this channel with the purpose of helping people to want to make and build things. And I was afraid that if I used certain tools like 3D printers, CNC machines, or laser cutters, most people couldn't afford them or wouldn't be able to have access to them. And so I just avoided it altogether. But as the years have gone by, these printers have become more and more affordable. The one that I bought at the beginning of this channel 7 years ago, I paid a lot of money for. It had one extruder, and yet its quality would be outmatched by a $100 printer that I would buy for my son only a few years later. You see, all these devices seem to be getting better and better and more affordable every year that goes by. And they become more and more accessible, so most everyone that I talk to these days either has a 3D printer or they have access to one through friends or at school or the public library, makerspaces, and so on. And while I've been reviewing more and more of these types of tools on the channel, I haven't really talked about the things that I've come to find are the keys of what to look for when getting one of these. The first thing being assembly. Basically, how easy is it to take it from the box to use? And to do that, Flashforge sent us this. This is the AD5X 3D printer, multi-filament printer. So that means that it can print up to 4 colors at one time. And actually not just 4 colors, but what we're going to look at today is the possibility of 4 complex filaments all at once. And I gotta say, it was pretty easy, basically. When you pull it out of the box, this is what you already have. They also send you some tools and some pretty simple instructions. Just unscrew the bracket, lift up the screen, and slot it into place. Then a moment of zen. And just like that, I completed these instructions. In the manual, I connect this part using 6 screws, take the IPS module, stick it on, and lock it into place. Insert the guide tube into the extruder and screw that into place. Connect the module to the machine with this cable and then secure it with this clip. Then we connect these spools to their corresponding numbers and then remove these screws from the build plate so it can go up and down. Plug in the power cord and switch it on. And just like that, it's assembled, most of which had to do with being able to ship it and fit it into the box. Our next requirement has to do with proprietary software. I have used a lot of different equipment over the past few years, and I've come to find that what you want is a machine that is able to be flexible enough for you to be able to use software that you might be familiar with or prefer, but at the same time also comes with software that is specific to that machine. So I don't have to mess too much with settings or purchase separate software just so that I can be able to use the thing that I bought. I also want something that allows me to be able to use the printer even without connecting it to another device. So we have this screen on the front of the monitor that has firmware which allows me to be able to print the things that I've already set up just from the printer itself. And setting it up was very straightforward. I was able to connect it to Wi-Fi without any problems. It does recommend that you update the firmware first and restart the printer before using it the first time. I didn't, and we'll find out later on why that was a problem. Flashforge sent us 4 different colors to use, including this one right here, which is Abyssal Red. All I have to do is just slide it onto the spool and feed it up into these tubes, and it sends it all the way across to my extruder. Then on the screen, I'm able to assign the colors to the different spools so I can tell what I'm printing out. Then when we go into here, they do have some prints that I can choose from to do a test, which they recommend right off the bat. In this case, I picked this one. I thought it was just a little tiny thing from the picture, but it is multicolor. I signed the colors, and then just like that, it started printing. And at first, it seemed like it was going pretty fast. It told me how long it was going to take, and that didn't seem very long either, but each time I came back to check on the print, I noticed it seemed like it hadn't progressed as much as I thought it should. In fact, it seemed to be taking longer and longer. And here's the thing that I really don't like. Each layer has multiple colors. And within that, first off, it has to print one of these. This is called a prime tower. Basically, it's printing a layer to get all of the previous color out and make sure that the new color is in there. Then it prints the portion that is that color, and then it goes to the back of the printer, heats up, pushes out some of that filament, cuts it off, then prints at the prime tower, then goes back, cuts off a little bit more, and then prints the next color, and so on and so forth. And this process of that switching out is kind of long. So once when it got to the gray parts, it was pretty fast. So the time it takes to print in multiple colors by itself was problematic for me. Second part to that, though, is the amount of filament that it's using on each of those layers. So I've got my prime tower that it's printing. Then if you're also printing supports, which in this case we have these tree supports, it's using all that filament. And then there's the portions that are just being kicked out the back like poop. It's a machine that poops. And just from this one project, I had tons of PLA poop on the ground. And when you put it all together, I mean, it looks like I almost wasted as much PLA as what it printed. And I can't put that on Flashforge. Actually, this printer is able to do this process much faster than most other printers. There's a certain test that can be run, and it's able to achieve that at a faster rate. But the process of multi-filament printing, just in general, is a bit of a waste of time and PLA, so money. Another problem that I ran into was that I came downstairs and found that it had stopped. And on the screen it said communication error, and apparently that is a common error when you don't update it first and restart it like they tell you to, which I didn't do, and therefore it was stopped. I did have to turn it off, turned it back on and again, and yes, it lets you continue from where you were. At least in my case, at least on this print, while it did continue, you can see where it stopped and restarted, because I do have a little bit of a layer that is not aligned. It would have been nice, though, if I would have been monitoring it to know that it has stopped, and the truth be told, I have the opportunity to do that because, going back to software, they have an app for it called Flashmaker. Flashmaker is able to connect with the printer. It can tell me everything about my temperatures, the progress, whether or not it's done, if there's been any errors, and I can even film or monitor it through the camera and light. If you have the camera and light, which I didn't know at first, I didn't. It kind of surprises me because I don't think they typically come with the camera or the light. But at the same time, I did go online to Flashforge to purchase both things. And they were only like around $30 for one thing, $15 for the other. So I feel like if you're buying this, I would just get those either included or purchase them to begin with, because that is a great feature. Plus, it allows you to even film that process. So we now can say that yes, we can print multiple colors with Flashforge. And so far, this is their filament that I've used. But the question is, what about the filament I like? Because I like some kind of atypical types of filament. Two of my favorites are wood and iron. And these aren't just colored like wood and iron. I mean, as in they actually have wood and iron in them. I like wood a lot because it does look like wood. It sands down better than most PLA because it does sand like wood. And you can even stain it just like wood. I feel like iron also prints very well. It's very, very strong. But also, because it is really iron, it's magnetic and it will rust. So perfect for doing things where you want it to be weathered or to look like something. But there's a problem with them. A lot of printers can't handle that filament. In fact, there's recommendations that you get special extruders. And a lot of printers will get pretty easily gummed up by them. I purchased these 3D model statues of Stan Lee. There's a bust. There's also this statue that has him sitting in a chair, surrounded by a lot of Marvel stuff. all I have to do is just prepare that model to be printed on this printer. And to do that, Flashforge also has a proprietary version of Orca that is easy to use. All I have to do is just bring in my 3D model, drop it on the hotbed, orient it the way I want it to be printed, choose my supports, I'll do a tree for this one, and then I slice it. So what is slicing exactly? Well, it means that it's going through and analyzing that model to figure out the best and most efficient way to attack it. And this is called G-code, basically telling the printer what to do on every single layer. Then we export that G-code, I put it on a USB, stick it into my machine, select my model, and just like that, it starts to print. But this is where I ran into another problem. So the first filament I wanted to try is this one. This is bronze. It's by Black Magic 3D. And while I did get to see what it looks like, and it does work great, the downside is I didn't look in advance to see that this is one of only a couple filaments that I have that has a different melting temperature. And because my G-code wasn't set up for that melting temperature, didn't print anything. Nothing came out of the extruder. I decided not to bother going back and re-slicing and generating a new G-code, and instead decided I wanted to do the whole thing in iron. So I changed my spool, clicked start, and just like that, it started printing. Now remember that this is just one color or one material type, and so it was able to do it really quickly, and afterwards, no poop. No poop. Also, there was no reason for a prime tower, so we didn't waste filament on that. And the tree supports that I chose were pretty minimal, so basically I didn't lose much filament either. And the print looks pretty amazing, actually. It came out really, really good. A lot of detail, a lot of raised areas. It did a great job. Another benefit of this iron is that it's pretty much pre-primed, so it responds really well to being sprayed, and I went ahead and just sprayed it with a nice bronze. So far it's doing great, but what if I want to print two filament types together? I went back into Orca and I brought in Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Anyway, I wanted to make the handle wood with the hammer and this bottom part being iron. So how do we do that? I already have one spool that I've assigned to iron, so then I add another one that I'm going to assign to spool number 2 that has my wood PLA on it. I even gave it a separate color so I can tell the difference. And now what we do is we go in and paint that area. We have some different options for how we paint it. Some are kind of like paintbrushes, others will fill entire areas, but the one I'm going to use is called height and range. I can do this horizontally or vertically. And basically, I just go to the levels that I want to paint and can go back and forth between those. I turned up the range so that it fills it up a little bit more, and boom! Really nice, even color, making a separate wood handle from these other two parts. Once again, I add some supports, slice it, export the G-code, transferred it to my printer, and I click print. On this occasion, the types of filament are very separate on the layers. So when it hits the wood, it's just wood, and whenever it hits the iron, it's just iron. So for that reason, it's not going to be switching between multiple filament, which means I'm not going to have a lot of poop out the back, and it's going to print a lot faster. And when it was done, it came out great. So this piece has the wood and the iron literally integrated. I didn't have to paste anything together or stick anything together. It's just all there, and it looks great. And yes, once again, that is real wood and iron. Not too shabby. I thought I'd try my hand again with the painting. Captain America's shield was also part of that statue. This time I tried a couple of different coloring options. But to be honest, the downside to this type of painting is that it's real hard to get it very precise. But generally I think I got it to where it looked like Captain America's shield. Supports, sliced, G-code. Put it on the printer, walked away, and when I came back, I had this thing. Kind of looks like the Captain America shield they showed in Iron Man. So what happened? Well, another common problem that you got to be aware of and really careful about has to do with the filament accidentally being wrapped around some of the filament that's underneath. And in this case, once when it got to that point, it got stuck, nothing else came through the tube, and so we had multiple layers that were missing. These days, most filament when it's being sold actually has this little trick where the end of the filament is bent. And the purpose of that is to keep that from happening also in the filament when you first buy it. But also when you use filament and you go to store it away, make sure that you use these little sections on the side to be able to tie it up. And that way it doesn't get twisted before the next time you print. So after I fixed that, I attempted it again and it came out okay. You'll see that there's some areas that didn't get fully colored right, and that has nothing to do with how it printed it. It has to do with the fact that when I went in and colored it, I was again using some of that height range. Because the 3D file, it wasn't perfectly flat. Some areas had some bleed through, and so that's what you're seeing with some of these lines. However, it still has that potential and it looks pretty good. Another thing I wanted to try was glass. I bought this a little while ago. I typed in glass and it gave me this. It's called T-glaze. I guess I didn't really fully know what it meant by glaze, but it looks fully clear and it looks like glass. And I had this Christmas project I really wanted to do of a Nuka-cola bottle that looks like it's made out of frozen ice. I created it in a free program that you can use called Tinkercad, exported it as an STL file, and then I sliced it in Orca. I decided I wanted to just print it without the supports, and that's what I did. One of the problems with this is that the spool has these really small holes. Too small for these spool holders on the side of my machine. But one option you can still use is something like this. This is basically used in areas where you have a lot of humidity to be able to keep your filament ready to be printed and keep it at the right temperatures. I just stuck it in there and connected it from there. But somewhere during the print process, part of the side of the extruder caught the filament and ripped the filament out of the box and under the print bed. And so eventually it got stuck. The upside is I did get the opportunity to be able to do some troubleshooting, and I got to see how easy it is to clear a clog. This is the first printer I've had that has the tubes. I always hated the tubes on other machines because I feel like it's much easier to access the filament, but there's not another way to do this without those tubes in order to keep your filament from getting broken or having other problems. But you can remove those tubes, and it's also easy to remove the nozzle and push through any filament that's stuck in there. Even though it didn't finish it, I was able to see what exactly this prints like, and it's not clear like I thought it would be. Instead, it's literally a glaze. I mean, it feels and looks a lot like ceramic, which could be cool, but wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I wanted something that was clear. I also felt to mention that this is also not PLA, but PETT, which means it has a different melting temperature and settings that I would want to use. But I did set up my file to be able to print using this, and then I had to go back and recreate it to print it in PLA. This PLA, it's a PLA Natural is what it's called, and it is essentially, it looks clear. When I ran the print, it printed just fine. No supports were needed. In fact, literally, when I went to pull off the plate, it just fell right off. There was nothing else I had to do. It does have some transparency, and it does seem a lot like an actual bottle. By painting and sanding it a little bit more, I was able to get this nice icy look. And then threw some lights in it, and boom, a Nuka-cola Christmas ornament. So how did this machine do with some of my requirements? It was easy to set up and use, has multiple options for printing and proprietary software, while flexible enough to use with other software. It can print multiple colors at one time, and it can make high quality prints in multiple colors or even filament. But the thing I don't like has nothing really to do with this printer. Again, it has to do with the process. Personally, I don't think I would typically use multiple colors of filament for the purpose of creating something that I would just then maintain that way. I really prefer being able to paint something afterwards, and I don't think I'd be using it for the purpose of having something that's just in multiple colors. However, I did like the way that it handled the multiple filaments. I could see an actual utility for that, because in this case I have something that I couldn't just paint to become that. I can't just paint something to be iron and wood and glass at the same level as I could if I just print it that way. So I do think I would use it, but I feel like I'd also have to decide every time if it's worth the waste of time and essentially money wasting the filament. Another thing that I think it's really important for being able to do multiple types of filament that I couldn't do on this occasion is dissolvable PLA. I can go to Orca and I can actually paint my supports to print with a different type of filament, and that filament can be dissolvable, which means that after I have printed my object, all I have to do to remove all of my supports is just soak it, and I should get a nice clean print. But I didn't have any dissolvable filament to test on this occasion. So what do you think? Should I make another video where we try that? And also stay tuned for the Pip-Boy Mini and some other projects that I'm working on literally right now that will be using this printer. To learn more about Flashforge or this printer, check out the description below, as well as some links that may also give you some discounts. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, comment below. This has been your Geek Fix.